Earlier in the week, we were talking college football playoff field, and I was going through the Big Ten teams. I didn't even mention Indiana. I got a couple messages from Indiana fans. I apologize.
The immaculate trash week. That's what we had. We haven't identified who the new green dot is. That's a problem. You have to know who you're sending the communication into.
The Big Bets on Campus podcast. All right,
here we go.
What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Week 8 college football betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me, as always, my fellow BBOC co-host, Collin Wilson. Collin, we had maybe the best podcast episode in our 7-year history. 7, 8. I think we're going on 8 years now. It's been a good couple of weeks. Hopefully we can keep it rolling. You ready to dive in here?
Yeah, the follow-up is going to be crucial. I was just wondering if you're going to catch a flight down so we could rush the field together after LSU loses, Okay, want to get you a little neck brace. Arkansas getting closer, Petrino getting closer to 6 wins, bowl team, Texas coming to town in a couple weeks, maybe an upset there, maybe we can make the playoff. All right, that's enough of being a fan.
We will talk Arkansas later. I will happily wear a neck brace if they can. Mr. Pittman can cover again as an underdog. Backing a lot of coaches this week coming off of buys that have been successful as underdogs. More on that later. But let's hop right in with our marquee matchups of the weekend. All right, let's start with Nebraska at Indiana. I took... it's undefeated Indiana. They've been a wagon against the spread. They've been putting teams away late. I had to take Nebraska catching 7 here. Just on a numbers play alone. I mean, look, if Nebraska, you change a couple plays in the Illinois game, that ridiculous interception, the overtime, this is 6-0 Nebraska. They're getting just as much hype as Indiana against 6-0 Indiana. Both teams coming off of a bye. The most likely outcome to me here is Indiana wins a close game, because what does Nebraska do? All they do is lose close games. Their special teams will probably lose it for them. Indiana's special teams have been really good, but this will be the best defense by far Indiana has faced. They haven't faced a top 50 team yet, and Nebraska's arguably top 25 team in the country. And I still have some questions about this Indiana defense. Right, they did give up 28 to Maryland and 400 plus yards. Northwestern was able to move the ball on them. So I think you have to take the points. I think this line should be closer to like 4.5. I think Indiana has proven that they deserve to be power rated higher, but not significantly higher than Nebraska. So I think the inflation has hit the market on the Hoosiers. I'm taking Nebraska, and Mr. Matt Rule. I mentioned underdogs, coaches that have been good as underdogs. Since 2005, out of 595 coaches, Rule, 5th most profitable as an underdog, 35-18 and 1 against the spread, 66% covering by 4.5 points per game. That includes 19-9 on the road, just under 68%. Give me Corn in Bloomington. I don't know if you disagree or not, but I think that you put in, I think I saw you put in a bet on Indiana first quarter. Is that your angle here?
Yeah, it is. I think Nebraska at this number at 6.5 or 7, I think is a good bet. I make this game Indiana -2. The problem is the strength of schedules on these two teams. You don't really know what the ceiling and the floor is for the two of these teams. And I think that is why I'm going to watch this, with very detailed, and just put a small bet in on an angle that I really liked. And I think one of the angles is Cignetti is fantastic off of a bye week, dating back to his FCS days as a head coach of Elon and James Madison. Cignetti's only lost 1 game off of a bye week, and that was to Louisville in 2022 when he was at James Madison. So there's no shame in that, because Louisville was, much better than James Madison in those days. So that's the only time Cignetti's ever lost after a bye week. And Nebraska, they've been balanced with moderate success rate, rush and pass, but the strength of schedule 117th, you really kind of wonder, why is pass blocking 74th? Why does Dylan Raiola's turnover worthy play rate go from, up to 4.5% when he gets pressure in the pocket? And why are you getting pressure in the pocket with that kind of schedule? And Nebraska has not been very good in offensive finishing drives. They've had 42 drives get in past the 40-yard line. That's great so far, but they've only averaged 3.2 points per trip. So they're 100th in red zone efficiency too. So just not getting it done when they need to get it done, which is why Indiana's favored here. But I definitely see Corn keeping it close. When you go schematically with the Hoosiers on offense, like Curtis Rourke just running zone read has just been fantastic so far, inside, outside zone. Tyson Lawton, Justice Ellis, they've combined for 13 rushing TDs. So far, the Indiana offense has just been a train. But again, strength of schedule is pretty soft. We don't know how good they are. But the other reason that I like Indiana enough to where I'm probably going to find a way to parlay them on the money line, there's a massive special teams difference here. Massive. SP Plus says Indiana is the number one team overall in special teams, and then Nebraska is 129. That's probably going to come into this game at some point. And finally, yes, Indiana in the first quarter is the bet that I made on the money line. Indiana has not allowed a single point in the first quarter this entire season. I'm going to roll with that here. I will find a way to get some Indiana parlays in, but I agree. Nebraska is the play all the way down to about 3.5 or 3.
My prediction, Nebraska's up 4 late, kicking a field goal to go up 7, push it right. Indiana comes down and scores the game-winning touchdown. That would be the most Nebraska ending possible. All right, let's move on to our second. And by the way, if Indiana wins this game, that college football playoff talk's really going to pick up. Earlier in the week, we were talking college football playoff field, and I was going through the Big Ten teams. I didn't even mention Indiana. I got a couple messages from Indiana fans. I apologize. But take care of business here, and the playoff talk will certainly pick up. Let's move on to our second marquee matchup of the weekend. Alabama at Tennessee. I have no idea on this game. I want no part of it. These are two teams that I've been fading the past couple of weeks, really all season, that I thought were overrated. Well, now they play each other. Alabama, 3-point favorite here, taking a bit of money midweek, total 56.5. These two teams are mirrors to me. I think they were both overrated. I maybe at the end of the day, I mean, look, they both come out, they take care of business, they look really good against weak competition. We've seen that all year. And then they step up in class a bit and they get upset. Then, I mean, look, Alabama loses to Vandy. Tennessee loses to Arkansas. They both come back home in bounce back spots, and they both should have lost again to teams that they were significant favorites over. Major over 2 touchdown favorites in both. Alabama should have lost to South Carolina. Tennessee should have lost to Florida if Mertz doesn't get hurt. And they don't mess up in typical Billy Napier style. They mess up the field goal at the end of that. They don't score from the 1 on a fumble. So, I mean, look, when I look at this, Tennessee's secondary is extremely vulnerable. Can Alabama's offensive line protect enough? That's the key on that side of the ball. Alabama's secondary is also extremely vulnerable. Can Nico complete a pass downfield? I don't know. Can their tackles play better? I have no idea. This game is, I have no feel for it. I show just from pure numbers perspective at 3, I show a little value on Tennessee. But I mean, Nico's dead last in QBR among all SEC quarterbacks. He knows number 1, by the way, Diego. This is a pass for me. But I think you have a strong feel.
I do. I think you said on Sunday, this is the broken Alabama defense going up against the broken Tennessee offense, and who would win that? That is the biggest handicap of this game. So I think real quick, when you look at the other side of the ball, I think Alabama's offense is going to cook here. Jalen Milroe still throws the most beautiful deep pass in college football. He has not recorded a turnover-worthy play on throws past 20 yards since the beginning of 2023. 0. I expect him to hit Ryan Williams against this extremely inexperienced Tennessee secondary. And when you ask, like, how inexperienced is it? I believe Taylon Green, in combination with DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz, recorded 17 explosive passes in the last 2 games against this Tennessee secondary. I have no worries about Jalen Milroe hitting his targets downfield. Will there be pressure? I'm sure. Will he escape the pocket? I'm sure. Will there be a mistake? Probably where he gets hit and there's maybe a sack or something. Probably. But when that connection is made, when that powder keg of Ryan Williams and Jalen Milroe hits, it's going to hit and it's going to be scores. Big problem for the Tennessee defense also. Keenan Pili, middle linebacker, captain of the defense, wearing the green dot on the back of his helmet means he has been the communication guy with defensive coordinator Tim Banks. He is out for the season. Tim Banks and his wife were crying. They miss this guy so much. Like, it is a huge loss to this team. As of Monday, they come out of practice. Josh Heupel says, we haven't identified who the new green dot is. That's a problem. You have to know who you're sending the communication into. So that was one reason why I liked Alabama. But then let's flip over to the biggest handicap in this game. What is going on with this Tennessee offense, right? Because you have to ask between these two units, what's more broken? Now, Nico, he's been really bad with pressure. 6 completions on 46 dropbacks that have pressure, a pressure to sack ratio of 25%. He can't get out of his own way.
He looks like he has no confidence, too.
Exactly. This is not like a Hendon Hooker run offense, which is what we thought we had about 3 or 4 weeks ago. He still has not recorded a big time throw in a crowded pocket. And Nico and Tennessee's quarterbacks as a whole haven't had any advantages against man coverage when Josh Heupel has been the head coach since 2021. Now, I bring that up. Why is it so important that Tennessee's offense is going to go against man coverage? Because that is what Kane Womack is running at Alabama right now at a 40% clip, one of the highest man rates in college football. So you have to go ahead and diagnose from an X's and O's standpoint, what does it mean when Tennessee is going to see man coverage? The reason why Heupel's system works in college and not in the NFL is because it's wide splits. They use sideline to sideline and the hash marks are out. They want to spread the field out. That makes your outside linebackers declare who they're covering in man coverage. That's where Alabama has a monster advantage here. Jihad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. Jihad Campbell, the outside linebacker for Alabama, ranks 4th of all individual man coverage pass defenders in PFF. 4th. Deontay Lawson, he's 15th in that ranking of all defenders. So Alabama's got it from a man coverage standpoint at the linebacker unit. That's going to help stop those slants that turn into explosives. Now, from the wideout position, can Malachi Moore defend the slot without throwing things and kicking balls? I mean, something's been broken at other pieces stuck, but from an outside linebacker position, stopping the slants on the inside, Alabama has a monster advantage here. You combine that with Tennessee losing their captain, the green dot communication guy on defense. I'm taking Alabama and swallowing the points here.
Yeah, I can't quite get there. The one thing I will say is whoever wins this game, I'll be looking to fade. But I'll go out on a limb and say this. Loser of this game, this is an elimination game. The college will out. Not on paper. Like, they could win out and then, 10-2, they're going to get in with their schedules. But I think the loser of this game, because what we've seen from each team, I don't think either team is running the table after this. So I think loser is out. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I had a bet preseason. My whole Tennessee handicap was not making the college football playoff minus 180. So I need this Alabama win pretty bad. But at the same time, Tennessee going to go to Athens and win against Georgia? No, absolutely not. I don't care what state the Bulldogs are in.
Yeah, look, my numbers set a little bit Tennessee, but I think with all the uncertainty and question marks and both secondaries, both offensive lines, Tennessee will be at home. At the end of the day, it might just be as simple as, at this point in time, against 2 questionable secondaries in front of 2 offensive lines that have question marks, you trust Jalen Milroe to make the downfield throws and to consistently hit his receivers more than what we've seen from Nico at this point. And Milroe is more effective with his legs at this point in time as well. That ultimately might be the difference. But for me, on the sidelines as of now, let's move on to our third marquee matchup of the day. We're going to stay in the SEC, head down to Austin for Georgia at number 1 Texas. This line just looks weird because if you just look at this game, you've the number 1 next to Texas, Georgia catching over a field goal. Doesn't happen often. This is a team, I think the only team to beat them is Alabama over the last 5 years, right?
Yep.
The team that hasn't lost to anybody else. Look, I read the market wrong in this game because I said I just want 4 with Georgia. And They got to 4. I bet it. Well, it went to 5. Should have waited.
Is that just on Isaiah Bond's news? I did not understand this move whatsoever.
I don't know. I didn't see a service release or there was a group midweek. There was a wave that came in and hit this. So I'm not sure, but this my logic here. I mean, Georgia definitely has issues, right? There's some injuries in the interior of the offensive line. The wide receiver room, which lost some key guys they thought they were going to have early in the season, is not as talented as it's been. They obviously missed McConkey and Bowers. The defense, the defensive line has had injuries. The secondary isn't your typical elite Georgia secondary. They've really struggled against play action. I mean, even last week against Mississippi State, that's somewhere where Ewers usually thrives. So this isn't your typical elite Georgia team. They're still one of the best teams in the country. The question you have to ask yourself, is Texas that elite team this year? I'm just not sure we have an elite team this year. The talent is just so much more dispersed. And you're seeing that with Georgia. They just don't have as much depth, like key depth, and Kirby's spoken about this. So I think there's a really good chance that these two teams are pretty equal. And you're going to get Georgia as the more desperate team here in this new college football playoff. They already have a loss. Texas can afford a loss here, much more so than Georgia. Georgia does have to come out with some fire here. Hopefully they learned from the Alabama experience, but they've come out slow all season. But we've seen Georgia be battle tested. They went into Alabama. They're not going to be shell shocked here. There's still questions with Texas. How good are they? Yes, they've been dominant. But I mean, we've seen this time and time again this year. Tennessee, just talked about, looked dominant. Well, they've come back down to earth. Alabama, Ole Miss. You can go on and on with these SEC teams. There's a reason what SEC underdogs are. Let me look this up. SEC underdogs are like 18-6 against the spread in league play this year, covering by 8 points per game. You've seen a lot of these teams come back down to earth. Even Ohio State looks dominant, steps up in class, loses to Oregon. There's a chance that's the case with Texas because who have they faced? I mean, Colorado State, Michigan with Davis Warren. You have UTSA, who's been horrific this year, and UL Monroe, who's since moved on to a new quarterback, Mississippi State with their backup quarterback, Oklahoma with their backup quarterback and no receivers. Like, they haven't faced a competent passing attack yet. And look, Texas is great. They might be the best team in the country. Their offensive line with Banks and company is great. Ewers is great. We'll see if Isaiah Bond, which I think matters, if he's fully healthy. But the defense is yet to be tested. And Carson Beck is playing very well. He is going to test this secondary, which, I mean, who's the best quarterback that they faced this year? Is probably Fowler Nicolosi.
Yeah. And I think Colorado State, ran 40 times and only threw like 12 times in that game.
Yeah, they just don't have the offensive line that can protect the throw against Texas, who was just dropping 8. So I just had to take. I wanted 4 or better. There's holes on this Georgia team, but there could be some holes that we just haven't seen yet with this Texas team. So I like the Dogs. What do you see here?
Yeah, I mean, at what point is your defensive line so beat up and not creating pressure that you simply just drop 8 into coverage and ask your defensive ends to go into the flats and cover running back? So this Georgia, these press conferences every week are generally the same thing from Kirby Smart and the other staff about the defensive line, which is we're hurt, we're injured on the interior. Mykel Williams is coming back. He's healthier now than he's ever been. Interior Christian Miller, he's not practicing because he's so beat up, but he is playing. And then you go into Mykel Williams, like, numbers, like he was only in 11 pass rushing snaps last week against Mississippi State. He didn't play one single rush defense snap the entire game. He had 6 total snaps 2 weeks ago against Auburn. Like, how healthy is Mykel Williams? Because we keep hearing that he's ready to go. Is he? So, an interior Christian Miller, he's dealing with injuries that limited in practice too. So if Georgia can't get any kind of pass rush here, I'm wondering what kind of defense they show to Quinn Ewers and everything else. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, Georgia's defense is turned the corner. I haven't seen it. And I'm not reading from an injury perspective that they have either. but I know that they're talented enough to play in space, and maybe the pass rush is just never going to be there. Does it even matter? Quinn Ewers is pretty good when he's got hands in his face this year. The key to the game for me is where the Bulldogs need to attack on offense. And that is something that has not been proven yet on this. If Texas wants to win the national title, you're going to have to defend the rush in between the tackles. It's something that a couple of teams have been able to expose. The Longhorns allowed Mississippi State last week and Colorado State earlier this season, their rushing attacks to go well over the mark of 48% success rate during the game, gashed them at some points. The Texas defensive interior is unproven. They're mid FBS and defending inside zone read. I think that's what's key here, because Trevor Etienne, that's all he runs with Georgia is the inside zone read. And Texas has not been very good. They've been pretty middle of the pack in defending that. So that is the angle where Georgia can get the ground game going. The problem with Georgia is they haven't played a full 4-quarter game yet. They played 3 quarters against Alabama. They looked electric. 1 quarter, they looked like a dumpster fire. So when, and Kirby's been asking.
I mean, even Clemson, like the second half was awesome. First half, not so much.
Right. Clemson covered the first half.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, why? What is it with this team? We saw this shit against Kent State a couple years ago. Like Kent State was holding on to a 10-point deficit at halftime, I think, to Georgia. I mean, I don't know what it is with these guys, but you're right about Carson Beck. He's going to go right at the back of this secondary, which kind of like gives you a flashback to the Sugar Bowl, the playoff last year. Like we knew that Michael Penix was going to have success against this secondary. Now the secondary's improved in name. We don't think Andrew Makuba is like all that great. I mean, there are better players in the secondary, but they have not been really tested yet. Beck has a high 59% success rate, and he throws an explosive pass on 1 of every 5 attempts against quarters coverage, which is what defensive coordinator Pete Kwiatkowski wants to show here for Texas. So I think there's a path for Carson Beck to get deep down the field. I think Trevor Etienne is going to be able to run it up the gut with inside zone. I think they're going to have a lot of success here. The defense is really the question. Now, I'm going to play the Georgia first half number instead of the full game. A little nervous about when Georgia wants to play all 4 quarters. They might not even show up in the first quarter again here, and the bet won't even matter. But Texas historically has been terrible after Red River, especially in the Sark era. Lost to Oklahoma State in his first year, beat Iowa State by a field goal 2 years ago, and struggled against Houston 1 by 1 possession. So I think Georgia's in a really good spot here. I know for a fact that they didn't send blitz last week against Mississippi State and allowed Mississippi State on offense to do whatever they want, including averaging like 5.3 yards per rush from Mississippi State. So I know Georgia went base defense and didn't show anything on tape. So I expect an inspired effort here from the Georgia Bulldogs, and I expect Texas to have some sort of hangover for a few series at the start of this game.
Yeah, post Red River as well, where they have not typically fared well against the spread. Should be a good one. Excited to watch. We'll learn a lot more about Texas for sure, and we'll see if Georgia can put together a full 4 quarters. All right, before we get to the rundown, got asked by a couple people to do this, so I'll do a quick rundown of quarterback team quarterback news worth monitoring. UCF, Byron Brown, question mark. NIU, you want to talk about some quarterback? Oh, the midseason MAC manifesto is going to be tough because there's a lot of quarterback injuries in the MAC. NIU, Ethan Hampton, questionable. Bowling Green, Connor Bazelak, questionable. His backup, Camden Orth or Connor Orth, I always forget his first name, has been out. Lucian Anderson, their 3rd string, was in there last week. He was atrocious. Central Michigan, their starting quarterback, out for the season. Burt Emmanuel was out last week as well. I think he'll be back this week. The freshman Tyler Jefferson came in last week. It's a mess. Kent State's down to the 3rd stringer. Toledo, Tucker Gleason got hurt last week. Georgia Tech, Haynes King, questionable. Tea Leaves say he's out. You got anything there?
Nothing.
I think I'm saying like you don't know if he's out for sure.
No.
Yeah, I mean, but line movement says Brent Key said he's still day-to-day in the game time decision. So he said he opted not to disclose the QB plan for Saturday against Notre Dame, which is smart. I mean, I don't. Why would you? Arizona State, Sam Levitt, out. Get ready for the Jeff Sims experience. Florida, Mertz, out. DJ Lagway, first SEC start. Arkansas, KJ, cleared. Talk about that game later. Michigan, turning to Jack Tuttle. Oak State, we'll talk about that later. Looks like they're moving on from Alan Bowman. Purdue, looks like it'll be Brown, the backup Brown again this week. Houston, I assume they're going to be sticking with Chris. Should be an upgrade. UCF, Colson, their freshman Colson started last week. It was a disaster. They went to Ja'Cory Brown. He's getting first team reps this week. I'd expect him to start. KJ looks like he's been put on the shelf. Utah, it's the Wilson show now. Not Collin Wilson, but Zach Wilson's little brother. San Jose State, I assume they're going to keep playing musical chairs with Egett and Brown. UConn, worth monitoring there. It doesn't really matter who their quarterback is. Not a huge drop off. Charlotte could see the return of Max Brown. More on that later. ECU, I don't know. Is it going to be Garcia or Hauser? We'll see. More on that later. Air Force, they made a quarterback change last game. They had 3 listed as the co-starters. The only one who didn't play was their original starter. You had Hayes and Johnson taking all the reps. They're the better runners. I think that's the smart move there. Georgia Southern, French, cleared of concussion. He'll go. By the way, did you see that Georgia Southern against that game last week against Marshall? They had Braxton coming in, just fumble it. That game was wild. Georgia State could be Christian Veer or it could be Gibson. Not sure. ODU, Grant Wilson, not sure on his status. Keep an eye on there. He's missed the last couple. So that's some of the quarterback news. Anything you wanted to add?
No, how gross. Well, you mentioned Arkansas. I think you said KJ, but we're going to talk about Taylor Green. Taylor Green is he's looking pretty magnificent.
All right, we'll talk about that later. Let's get to the rundown here. Run through. Let's go like 7 games here quickly. Miami at Louisville. I would have put a lot of money on Louisville making the spots piece.
Yeah.
It didn't. I need a little more.
Yeah.
I lean that way numbers wise. But Miami's coming off of a bye. Louisville hasn't been that impressive. It's hard not to envision this game being a shootout. Like Miami's given up a ton of explosives. Louisville's been very explosive. What do you see here?
There's going to be havoc. I think that's the thing. Remember, the handicap of Miami always starts off, will there be havoc? So this is a battle for the Howard Schnellenberger trophy here, and Tyler Shook's going to go up against his old head coach, who was Mario Cristobal at Oregon. So there's a little bit of a connection there. We'll see if Shook has some revenge he wants to get out here. But Miami's off their bye after a 25-point comeback that I don't think anybody saw at 1 o'clock in the morning. And Louisville's lost 2 straight to Notre Dame and SMU, but they bounced back with a narrow road win against Virginia. It was a little bit of a struggle. The Cardinals have an advantage on the ground with Isaac Brown. He got up to 20 carries against Virginia for 146 yards, and the Hurricanes have been 36th in defensive rushing success rate, which is a little bit surprising because they've had such a soft schedule of offenses so far. Really, one of the more potent running attacks, if you want to call it that they face, is Virginia Tech. Tootin and Drones generated a 64% success rate on the ground. So I'm not positive that Miami's defense, which can cause a lot of havoc, is really good against the rush. Then on the other side of the ball, I think Louisville is legitimately tested on defense and going to be able to get in Cam Ward's face. Their pass rush is top 20 per PFF. Key to beating Miami is creating havoc. So I do like Louisville here, but I do agree with you on the number. 4 would be the last I buy it at, but I'd be nervous the entire game with that. But I like Louisville in this spot.
Probably a good live betting game. There's going to be swings in this game, massive swings. I think. At the current number, I lean Louisville, but don't love it. They haven't been that impressive. I mean, they got lucky against Georgia Tech. I mean, granted, they got a bit unlucky against Notre Dame, but lucky last week against Virginia. And there's just holes on this team. Offensive line isn't as good. Defense isn't as good. They've had some injuries as well. So lean Louisville, but nothing strong. UCLA at Rutgers. Man, this line has come down. I had Rutgers circled.
Yep.
Can I trust the Greek water pistol to lay points with him? That's the question, because they got embarrassed. They lost to Nebraska. They got embarrassed last week at home. They're staying home. And UCLA, they played 4 top 20 teams in a row, then lose in heartbreaking fashion to Minnesota. Now have to come across the country to play Rutgers. That's a brutal spot. Can we lay it here with Rutgers?
I want Rutgers. The problem is, you're right. The number's going the other way. And frankly, I don't like laying a whole bunch of points with Rutgers. So it can just keep moving until I decide to buy them. And what are you scared to take Ethan Kaliak-Manis? I think it's really scary. He's had 3 interceptions over the last 2 games. At Rutgers is like one of the best havoc allowed offenses in the nation. They're 13th right now. They just don't make a lot of mistakes. And Kaliak-Manis has more room to throw than other quarterbacks. So he should have been better at that. I think if you want Rutgers, you're not looking to take a lot of points. Just let that thing come on down. UCLA is third toughest strength of schedule in the nation, which is puts a lot of noise on their numbers because their numbers look really bad, but they've played an extremely tough schedule. About a dozen analytics that say that they can't do anything on defense or offense, but we know what their identity is on offense under offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy. They want to throw all the time with Ethan Garbers. He's been pretty horrible. A 4-to-9 ratio in TDINTs and big time throws of turnover worthy plays. It plays right in the teeth of Rutgers defense, which is the secondary. They're top 30 in every pass defensive metric that there is. And Rutgers should be able to run all day on this Bruins defense. Kyle Monagai, 38 missed tackles forced, 7 TDs already this year. I want Rutgers. I want a shorter spread. It could be a money line parlay, maybe mix it in with Indiana. I haven't decided, but Rutgers is the look.
I would agree. All right, Auburn at Missouri. I like Auburn here. Look, by the way, I mentioned coaches off of buys and that are good as underdogs. That fits here with Auburn and Hugh Freeze, who's still one of the best game planners in college football. So I assume we'll have a really good game plan here to attack a very vulnerable Missouri defense. I mean, I had questions about this Missouri defense all over edge rush, linebacker, secondary after what they lost last year. And they haven't really answered any of those questions. Freeze 30-14 against the spread, 68% as an underdog, covered by a touchdown per game, 18-9 against the number against SEC competition as an underdog. But I mean, you look at this Auburn team, they should have beat Oklahoma. They probably should have beat Arkansas. They just had untimely turnovers. Meanwhile, Missouri, you look at their 3 data points against quality opponents, they got blasted by A&M. They should have lost to Vandy at home. And they were trailing by double digits to Boston College at home. They've played the significantly easier schedule. Auburn has better numbers, and some of Auburn's numbers include Hank Brown at quarterback. Peyton Thorne's been much better. I think Hank Brown's had like 80 or 90 snaps. I didn't even mention Auburn's loss earlier. They lost to Cal. They had a -5 turnover margin in that game. So could Peyton Thorne just throw a couple pick sixes here and I'm toast? Yeah. But I don't see much separation between these teams. Like I look at my power ratings right now, and in that like 18 to 25 range, it's like all of these 18 to like 28. There's like a 10. It's all these SEC teams like Arkansas, Auburn, Kentucky, South Carolina, Missouri. I just don't think there's much separation between all those teams in that second tier. Tennessee might be headed right. They're getting close.
Pass them.
What's that?
You're going to go past them below the standings.
Yeah, they might just keep on dropping if Nico doesn't clean it up. But I just don't think there's much separation here. Missouri off 2 straight road games. Auburn off of the bye. I think Auburn will be able to move the ball here. They've shown they can move the ball against good defenses all year. And they put up 300 yards against Oklahoma in the first half. Yeah, give me War Eagle here.
Yeah, I dislike both of these teams, but I can only point out one problem with Auburn. I can point out multiple problems with Missouri. I mean, with Auburn, you're dead last in net turnover margin. You're -11 on the season. You've given away 15 balls. You've only gotten 4 back. That makes me a little cautious against a Missouri defense right now that I believe is they've gained 7 turnovers this season, 5 of them off of interceptions. So that's it. That's the hesitation with Auburn, right? It's just from a turnover perspective that you and I both know can't last forever. We don't think. So we'll see about that. But on the other side, like Missouri, I have no love for this team. As amazing as high as I was on them last year, I don't have any of those feelings for them this year. They've been great at defending the rush and causing havoc. That should work against Auburn and Jarquez Hunter. He's been the bell cow. And their havoc allowed mark for Auburn has been, I think it's 100th right now. So they do make a lot of mistakes, like we said earlier. But Peyton Thorne was pretty good passing in his return against Oklahoma, and he didn't make any mistakes against Georgia, which is really all you can ask for. And this Mizzou secondary has not been good whatsoever. They can't contain explosives. They're 131st in standard downs explosives. That means in early plays, like 1st and 10, 2nd and 7, standard downs here, Auburn's going to be able to hit some explosive plays and create a TD. And I think specifically it's going to be Keandre Lambert-Smith out of the slot, maybe Jarquez Hunter on the ground. But it really looks like there's an advantage for Auburn to throw early here because Missouri is giving up a ton of explosives. And then offensively, I don't know what's going on with Missouri and Kirby Moore. Electric last year with Cody Schrader. He's not on the team anymore. They all of a sudden cannot create explosives. They're 121st in passing EPA. I don't know what's happened to Brady Cook. I don't know if Luther Burden's on the back of a milk carton in Columbia, Missouri. I don't know. But they're 121st in passing EPA. They're even worse in finishing drives. This offense is broken, Drink. Get it fixed. But I like Auburn
And their
here.
best back, Nate Noel, he might be out this week too. He's averaging
Right.
6 yards per carry. His backup Carroll's only at 4.8. So
Yeah, Carroll's
yeah,
not doing the same as what he did for Georgia State. But if you can swallow the turnover stuck, you can handle it here. By the way, I don't think this number's done moving. I think it's going down to 2.5 or 3. So if
yeah,
you
that's where
want
I
to
think
get
it should be.
Auburn, yeah, if you want Auburn, get it.
I don't think there's much difference in this team. I think this should be 3. South Carolina, Oklahoma. I think South Carolina wins this game, but can't get here at this number. But how do you score in this? I know this total's super low, but I would lean under here as well. First to 20. Hey, maybe that's generous. First to 17 wins this game, maybe. Oklahoma 1.5 point favorite, home favorite as we talk. Anything here?
I bet Oklahoma, and I actually took a bad number. I thought the number would go up for Oklahoma. I was expecting some positive health updates. Jalil Farouk had a 6-week injury after the Temple game for Oklahoma, except it's been 7 weeks now, and he still hasn't been cleared. He's not even questionable. So I thought Jalil Farouk, we would get some positivity in the wide
Ertz
receiver.
is questionable, right? That hasn't been updated yet.
Ertz is questionable, soft tissue injury. It's like, what is going on in Norman? It's like, the kid, you go there to be a doctor. What's wrong with the doctors in Norman these days? Can we get this wide receiver unit to get healthy? And the South Carolina offense just isn't trustworthy whatsoever. They've allowed more sacks than any other team in FBS. They've allowed 26. They've had 8 fumbles on the air. It's the worst mark of any offense in the country. You can't trust them whatsoever. So what are we talking about here in this game? It's South Carolina's broken offensive line and knack for causing turnovers all the time against themselves, running inside zone with Raheem Sanders and Lenoris Sellers. It's been a good combination for highlight reels. It's been a lot of fun to watch because it's either a disaster or it's a boom play.
But is that all you need here? That's why I think South Carolina wins this game. Because I just think South Carolina, I don't think either offense is going to have much success. Probably not going to have much success through the air. But I trust South Carolina's just ability to hit a couple explosive runs and maybe, sustain a few more drives on the ground than Oklahoma's rushing attack. And the South Carolina defensive line should eat Oklahoma's offensive line alive. So I think that's ultimately the difference.
So the reason I bet Oklahoma is for one simple fact. Both of these teams run heavy inside zone read. Oklahoma's defensive line has a very high 59% success rate against inside zone read, as where South Carolina's defense is 44% success rate against inside zone. Based on that alone, I like OU's defensive front 7 better. That's why I bet it. I thought it would go up higher. I didn't know it was going to come back down, but I'm sticking with the Sooners.
Michigan at Illinois. I was waiting on this line and it got hit and I couldn't catch up. I was like, you got to be kidding me. I wanted Michigan here. I think this Illinois team stinks. They've been getting lucky all year. They should have lost to Purdue. They should have lost by about 40 to Penn State. They got lucky against Kansas, the Kansas team that has not been very good, winning overtime against Nebraska. Michigan coming off a bye, turning to Jack Tuttle. Can the receivers do anything here? I'm not sure, but he's going to get all the reps. I think that'll help. I think the Michigan will win this game in the trenches. I think their offensive line, they made some changes up front, which I think will lead to increased efficiency. Their defensive line should dominate the Illinois offensive line. Going to get pressure here on Altmaier. Altmaier's due for just a complete stinker. The turnovers are coming, people. It's not
coming here. It's coming here. Yeah.
So yeah, I like Michigan. I just can't like 3.5. But I think Michigan gets it done on the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Consider that Michigan has a much tougher strength of schedule than Illinois. Illinois outside the top 50 and who they've faced so far this year. Like you just said, Michigan is the #1 pass rush unit and defense in all the nation per PFF, and they're going up against
Illinois' offensive line is bad.
Real bad. They're 115th in havoc allowed. They cannot pass block for Altmaier. There's some problems coming here for this Illinois offense, as if there weren't some already. You go to the other side of the ball, I'm not sure if it matters that Tuttle is back for this game because Illinois can't defend the run. They're outside the top 100 line yards on
their D line is bad.
Yeah, so I think Michigan abs. I know it got hit, and you don't want to lay a lot of points with a team like this, but I don't know how in the world you would ever take Illinois here.
USC at Maryland. I'm ready to be hurt. I'm on the Terps. Uh,
Yeah,
do you agree here?
I do. I don't know
On
what's.
the agree board?
Yeah, put it on the board. It's going to get played. I know it'll be in all my round robins. I know I'm going to play it on the spread. The main sticking point here that I think everybody needs to realize is the pass rush. Um, USC is completely undersized on the offensive line, especially at the tackle position, and they have no depth. If you look at USC's numbers right now, 129th in pass blocking, Maryland's going to eat that up. They are top 30 in pass rush.
Create some havoc. That's what they're good
Yeah.
at. And
Yeah.
USC hasn't been hitting explosives through the air. That's where Maryland is
Well,
really, really poor. USC, you mentioned depth. USC defense too. That Bear Alexander out. Gentry, their best linebacker, best run stopper, out for the season. Now they lose their best edge rusher. I mean, this defense is desperate. Now you're going across the country after a brutal stretch. Where's this team at mentally? College Bowl playoff hopes, Big Ten hopes are done, cooked after that Penn State loss. Maryland, even an extra day to prepare. It's the second straight home game.
well, I mean, think about what I said earlier, Stuck. USC has looked bad in 2 trips to the Central Time Zone. We're on 3 time zones here. How bad are they going to look?
First time they'll be playing on the East Coast, like a true East Coast game since 2014 when they lost to BC as 17-point favorites. Over, let's see, they're 0-10 straight up, 1-9 against the spread in the Eastern or Central Time Zone since 2011. Pretty crazy. I think that the Terps are super live here to pull off
Yeah.
this game outright. Colorado at Arizona. I don't know. This Colorado game, it'll be chaotic. It'll come down in the fourth quarter. That's all I know. I'm probably not betting this game. What do you got here?
I projected at one point. I completely agree with the number going down. I don't think it's going to stop until it gets closer to a pick. Um, there's a major advantage for Colorado here, which is defensive finishing drives. They're top 20. We've given credit to Robert Livingston, the defensive coordinator that came in from the Cincinnati Bengals. That's a true reflection of him and what he's been able to do when teams get close to scoring. Arizona has been horrible in scoring chances. They're 115th on offense. I think it plays a major factor here. I think Colorado can get this win.
All right, let's move on to some trash. Last week, the trash went 5-1, and Collin even had a bonus. I'll track that as well.
The
Collin had a
immaculate
bonus
trash.
pick
The immaculate trash week. That's what we had.
with Rice. Yeah, what a comeback. But Collin doesn't have a pick this week. I'm sure he'll log like Kent State after we're done recording, like he did last week. So let's get to some trash here. I have 4. Let's start with Ball State catching 26.5 against Vandy. This is the spot of the year. I mean, Vandy off upset wins over Kentucky, Alabama. They have #1 Texas coming to town next week. Wouldn't be surprised if they rest guys. Hobby dealing with some injuries. Wouldn't be surprised if they don't show anything. Ball State has some juice. And by the way, this is just, I am the Pavia whisperer. Take him as a double-digit dog. Fade him as a big favorite. That's it. They're a Service Academy SEC team in an awful spot here. Give me Ball State. Agree or disagree?
I would like a better number. I'd like 28, but I'll agree with you.
Not on the agree tab, though?
Not on the agree. Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
fully agreed.
I don't know. I think you disagree with this one because we talked about this early in the week. Give me Western Michigan at Buffalo. Buffalo 2-0 in the MAC. They have 2 double-digit outright upsets, but they caught Toledo, who I think stinks, in a great spot off the MAC revenge game. They caught Northern Illinois off the Notre Dame game. This offense is still the worst in the country. From a success rate point of view, they have nothing in the passing attack. Western Michigan's defense is bad. I don't think Buffalo could take advantage. I trust the Western Michigan offense more. They got all their guys back. Their offensive line is healthy. You got Gideon and West up there. Buckley's back. They can run on this Buffalo team. Buffalo, great linebackers, super undersized defensive line. Western Michigan, huge offensive line. Going to lean on them, manageable third downs. I trust their offense more. It's healthy now. They dealt with injuries. This is a team that, by the way, get a muff punt, they win at Wisconsin. They convert inside the 5, they win at Marshall. Better than the record indicates. I think Buffalo goes down here. Agree or disagree?
I actually agree with you completely. I can't believe I'm back in Walt Bell here, but I'm going to take Western Michigan. Top 20 strength of schedule compared to Buffalo, way outside the top 80. I mean, it's pretty soft what Buffalo's done so far, and they have some terrible offensive numbers.
All right, I'm already fading Indiana. I tweet every week. All you got to do is wake up that Indiana, Army, and Navy. Well, uh, I'm fading Indiana with Nebraska. I'm also fading Navy with Charlotte. And my guy, Biff Poggi, baby. Glass half full kind of guy. This is a team, number one, they're coming off a bye. It's always important when you're facing a unique offense. And they played Navy last year. I know it's a brand new offense. You have Delaware wing team mixed with a triple option, a lot of play action, motion. It's been great, but uh, you got time to prepare, which helps. Max Brown could be back, the Florida transfer quarterback. Add some uncertainty for the Navy prep here. This is just the very top of the market on Navy. I mean, I'm sorry. I have to fade them here. Navy, and just like Army, by the way, I'll throw Army in the ring. I'll get your thoughts on both. I'm fading Army as well. This is the most un-American trash segment ever. Give me ECU. Both defenses, ECU and Charlotte. I mean, ECU's run D is like top 5 in a lot of metrics. Charlotte's line yards and stuff rate are okay. And I still don't trust the Navy or Army defenses, by the way. And they haven't played anybody. Let's start with Navy. So actually, let's start with Army because they really haven't played anybody. Lehigh, FAU, Rice, Temple, UAB, and Tulsa. That is nothing but carcasses. I mean, I have their average ranked opponent outside the top 120. It doesn't get any easier. ECU also off of a bye. And I mean, look, Army's playing extremely well, but they've played nobody. Their defense is still outside the top 90 in success rate, despite that schedule. And I mean, UAB with their third string quarterback was moving the ball on them. Army, and both Army and Navy have some regression coming. They played nobody, and their turnover regression, the red zone regression. I mean, the Army defense teams are scoring on 40% of drives inside the red zone. I mean, Texas is second in the nation at 57%. Army's also scored touchdowns, 22 of 24 trips. Give me ECU here. Hopefully they just don't turn it over every play. And then the same thing with Navy. I mean, Navy's been great. Yes, they beat Memphis, which is a good data point, but they also gave up 700 yards in that game. The defense has issues. They can give up explosive. That's where Charlotte lives. And, you know, if it's Max Brown, I think that's a good thing. If it's Purdy, the freshman, he's playing better. He came in, led a comeback victory over Rice, led a rout over ECU prior to the bye week. So, yeah, I think that and Charlotte they have familiarity here. I'm fading both Army and Navy. Agree or disagree?
Take a deep breath here. I'm on East Carolina against Army. It was the very first play I put in the action app this week.
Add to the board.
The rush defense is completely legit.
And its Service Academies is over 2 touchdown favorites. And they're not against corpses. These are the auto plays for me. I'm sorry.
I didn't think I was going to get involved with this Charlotte Navy, but I am actually going to throw money on it right here at the end of the podcast. And
on the agreed tab.
And I mean, here's the deal. Charlotte throws a 50 burger up against ECU, and I'm thinking, okay, I get it. ECU's defense sucks, but what in the world? How did Charlotte score this many points? You go in there, running back a Sean Wilson, 164 yards. He averaged 11 yards per carry. He had 3 TDs on the ground. Cartavius Norton, 2 TDs on the ground, averaged 9 yards per carry. This Charlotte rush explosives is now top 10 in the nation. And Navy is 102nd giving up rush explosives, and they have no rushing success rate. Their line yards are 121st. And what's the kicker when I tell you those defensive stats about Navy? Their strength of schedule is 132nd.
Army's even worse, so like 150th.
What is this Army Navy total going to be? Like 80? Like Navy can't defend the run. So Charlotte puts a 50 burger up with running, and now they get this Navy defense on the ground. I mean,
Navy also has Notre Dame on deck. Maybe they're caught peeking ahead. I also wouldn't be surprised if they spent part of their bye week preparing for Notre Dame.
Now I've got to put a money line bet in. What are you doing to me?
All right. Trash, ECU, Charlotte, Ball State, Western Michigan. You agree on 3 of the 4.
Yep.
All right. By the way, make sure you check out the Group of 5 guys. Their episode is out now. Mike and Mike always do a great job. ECU, just get it together. No weak hearts. Shout out to their ex-head coach, Steve Logan. Bye week for San Diego State, so nothing there.
Right.
And by the way, Group of Five guys, they do love Charlotte as well. So we're all on Team Biff here at BBOC. One before we get to 3 and out, Collin talking Arkansas football. Might as well put it on here because I know you're on it. I'm on it.
Yeah.
I like Arkansas. I mean, this LSU team, by the way, ECU, 2 17-0 blown leads away from being 5-1, and this line wouldn't be this high. Arkansas, I mean, this team's playing really well, and Sam Pittman is a dog. I mean, I say it all the time. Guy is a 22-8 against the spread as an underdog, covering by about 5 points per game, 15-4 against top 20 opponents when he's catching points, 5-1 against the spread with extra time to repair. Extra time to repair key here. LSU off that thrilling, emotional win in overtime, now hitting the road to take on Arkansas. Arkansas arguably has two of the best coordinator duo in college football. I expect them to both have great game plans here. One-dimensional LSU offense, easier to prepare for. Yes, Nussmeier's going to get his yards. He might have a healthier wide receiver room. Taylor Green, I think, is going to be healthy. You'll have more on that. I like Arkansas at home to pull this off. Look, LSU should have lost to South Carolina if they don't get every single call under the sun. And as someone who was on them last week, they should have lost to Ole Miss. And I mean, LSU, you look at their penalties in their two league wins, that they won by a combined 6 points. And by the way, the last 4 or 5 meetings between Arkansas and LSU have all been decided by 3 points. In their 2 comeback league wins, and they should have lost both, their opponents were penalized 25 times for 233 yards. I mean, that's how they've won these games. LSU defense still extremely vulnerable. Woo pig suey. You agree?
100% agree. But listen, first off, Taylor Green is 100% healthy. Don't listen to what any of the coaches are saying. He does not have he has a bone bruise, but it doesn't really hurt. He's throwing deep in practice. He is 100% committed. He's there before everybody. He's there after everybody leaves. Taylor Green is going to be fine. And that is really bad news for an LSU defense that does not want to see any more zone read concepts. They struggled with South Carolina in the RPO from Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders. Those guys combined for 230 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns. So any kind of RPO that's going to be run by Talon and Jaquindon Jackson is going to be horrific for LSU to try and defend. The Caden Durham thing, we were pretty hot on LSU. We thought maybe LSU had a bit of a rushing attack with Caden Durham, the freshman there, but he didn't really show out against Ole Miss. I think Arkansas's defense, specifically defensive coordinator Travis Williams, may be the best in the game, rising. I don't know how we're going to keep him in the offseason. He's going to come up with a game plan here, because explain to me how Arkansas is 107th in coverage grading, but they completely stifled Tennessee. That's because of Travis Williams and his game planning. I think there'll be something here for Garrett Nussmeier. Can't really pick it out of the numbers here. He's been excellent against cover 2, cover 0. He's been excellent against almost everything. And does Williams elect to go heavy blitz here? This is one of the best pass blocking offensive lines in the country. Does he decide to lay back? It's going to be interesting to see this, but there is some familiarity here. Arkansas.
I think you lay back, simulate some pressures, pick and choose when you bring blitz. But yeah, I mean, you can take away the run, try to confuse Nussmeier into some mistakes, trying to move the ball down the field consistently through the air. I think that's the best approach, but we'll see. He's smarter than me.
Yeah, and the last thing is Landon Jackson, the star edge for Arkansas on the defensive line. He played for LSU, and he was roommates with left guard Garrett Dellinger. He knows this offensive line very well. I think that's an advantage for Arkansas getting prepared here. Arkansas is the more explosive offense. They're the more limiting defense when it comes to explosives, and they are night and day better at creating quality drives and getting into scoring position. Give me the Razorbacks. No kicking issues, no stupid ass fake punts and fake field goals. Just drive it in the hole, Pittman. Let Petrino do his job. Woo pig suey.
Woo pig suey. Indeed. All right, before we get out of here, let's go 3-and-out. This is the portion of our Big Bets on Campus podcast that we record live. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you for coming to our new BBOC channel. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. As we do each and every Thursday night, we will go 3-and-out. We'll have 3 downs and go for it on 4th down with our favorite bet. We'll cover our favorite underdog moneyline parlay. Hit 2 in a row, going for 3 straight. Our favorite overdog, aka favorite favorites. And we'll kick things off in just a moment with some Friday night lights. Collin, let's dive right in to some Friday Night Lights. Let's start in the ACC. Florida State will travel to Duke, catching right around a field goal here. I haven't taken the plunge yet with Florida State. I know you tried to earlier this season. I won't mention, I guess I'm mentioning it now, your college football playoff graphic with Florida State in your field. So sorry for dropping that in. I haven't taken the plunge yet with Florida State. I think this is the chance. This is the time to do that. Look, Duke has not beaten anybody. I mean, their schedule has been laughable. They finally stepped up, lost by double digits to Georgia Tech in their previous game. Before that, I mean, this is a team that had come back from down 20-0 against North Carolina. They should have lost to Northwestern. Sorry, I mean, that's another, add that to the list of your cursed weekday bets with Northwestern and Duke. And Florida State, look, they're coming off a bye. I still respect Norvell from a game planning perspective. And they're going, if you look at their depth, their projected depth chart this week on offense, they're going with like a little bit more of a youth movement. So I think they could come out of the bye week with a little more juice here. DJU obviously no longer under center. I think that's ultimately a positive. They still have a really talented defense. I don't trust Malik Murphy to consistently beat this Seminoles defense. So you just change a couple results for Duke. Like they lose that Northwestern game as they should have. North Carolina doesn't melt down. I don't think that Florida State is catching a field goal plus here. I like the Noles. Are you going to join me?
I was going to have you try to convince me here. I mean, listen, Duke is 5-1 with a strength of schedule rank of 100. It's not like Manny Diaz has really been tested yet here, and a lot of coin flips has gone his way. Florida State, I mean, I projected this game at 3, so I understand the move off of 4 down to 3. Florida State's coming off of a bye week. Brock Glenn is now like the master of festivities for Tallahassee whenever the season like gets thrown in the garbage now 2 years in a row. But there just wasn't a lot of positives against Clemson, and that kind of worries me. 3.9 yards overall, yards per play, no explosive drives. Lawrence Toafili, 1.6 yards per carry. I didn't see any kind of spark against Clemson that I would want in a box score to get in heavy on this. And I still like Duke's offensive line from a pass blocking perspective. Right tackle Brian Parker, the second, is the best right tackle in the nation. He has allowed 2 pressures and 233 pass blocking snaps. So that kind of takes away a little bit of the bite that Florida State might have trying to create some havoc. And Malik Murphy he hasn't faced anybody yet. A 12-7 big time throw to turnover worthy play. So you can really shoot holes through Duke on the fact that they haven't really been challenged yet. I like the youth movement that maybe Norvell has seen the signs that it's time to go ahead and get started on 2025. Florida State's biggest advantage here is explosives in the air during passing downs. Duke is 18th in coverage, and they have heavy success in cover 1 and cover 3. Those are things that have given Florida State issues. So I like the under in this game stock. I was going to hope you could convince me to Florida State, but you just really kind of betting on the youth movement, just being more fresh than DJ and the crew that was there before for Florida State. So I think I'm going to stick with the under.
Man, I mean, you're just throwing me under the bus here, saying I didn't make a great
You have to
case.
convince me.
I apologize for that. So you're rolling with the under. I'm rolling with the Noles. I'm ready for the pain. Let's move on to Oregon in a very tricky spot, just situationally. I had this one circled. It's like, all right, if they beat Ohio State before the season started, if they beat Ohio State going to Purdue, the spoiler makers at home. This is tricky travel spot, short week off of that emotional game. They're laying 4 touchdowns here. I just couldn't get here numbers wise. I mean, the spot tells me Purdue. We saw some life. Thought there might be some quit watch. They showed life. Arguably should have beat Illinois last week. But how are they getting stops? I don't know. Oregon and Dylan Gabriel throws some red zone picks, maybe is what you're hoping for. I don't know how they get any stops in this game. Above 4 touchdowns, lean to Purdue. Below, no thank you. But this ultimately just might be a stay away for me. You told me before the season, Ohio State, Oregon beats Ohio State. I would have told you 90% chance I'm on Purdue. I don't think I can get there. Maybe you can convince me if you do like Purdue. What do you see here?
There's a side that I want, and I'm like, am I going to do it? Do I have the balls to put money down on this? And so it's going to be Purdue in the first half, spot related, of course, because if you go back and you look, these Pac-12 members that have had to travel east, it's been a severe struggle bus. USC has just looked awful against Michigan and Minnesota losses. UCLA lost 27-11 at Penn State. Washington was blown out at Iowa after beating Michigan at home. And the Huskies lost at Rutgers in week 5. Like, this whole travel between two time zones is a real thing. So is Oregon going to be a part of that? And if they are, after this huge win against Ohio State, wouldn't you kind of want to take Purdue in the first half? A number. I mean, we're all talking about this steaming up the board. I see 29 and a halves as you and I are talking. It's way out of range. I have Purdue at about 1 plus 26 in this. So this number is way out of territory. The first half number last I looked was 17. It might be up higher than that right now with the steam going on. So the question is, can you back a Purdue team that went 10 quarters without scoring a touchdown before they got into the second half against Illinois last week, went berserk and shoved the game into overtime? Ryan Brown was the quarterback that was responsible for that last week in the second
They'll
half.
start again.
Yeah, he'll start at 3 touchdowns. He just had 1 turnover-worthy play. He had 11.2 average depth of target, so he was just out there chucking bombs. But I don't think he's going to be as fortunate here, because when you go inside of his numbers, and this is what's kind of got me tailing off of Purdue, he had 13 pressures and 26 passing attempts. That resulted in just 1 sack. I mean, he was just sort of a magician dancing around all the pressures that he got and all of his passing attempts last week. 3.7 seconds for release time. Like, the average is 2.5. He held onto the ball forever, and somehow Illinois didn't get any hands on him and only sacked him once. And the key to getting explosive on Oregon is the rushing attack. Brown had over 100 yards on the ground last week, so he had 85 of those off of design calls for Purdue. So if there's going to be any kind of, push against Oregon here in this number, it's got to come from Brown on the ground. Oregon has struggled against zone read this year. We've talked about that in the past. Inside zone, 44% success rate for the Ducks. That is the path. Ryan Brown on the ground. I don't know how he throws 3.7 seconds before release time and gets away with it against Oregon. I don't think it's possible against that defensive line. But Purdue in the first half is the spot play. I think I'm just going to let this thing steam out till about Friday, 1 hour before kick, and maybe look at a first half line.
All right, let's move on to a game with college football playoff implications. And for the team that many would have guessed that does not apply for before the season started. Talking about Oklahoma State at undefeated BYU. BYU, one of 2 teams, I believe, that's undefeated against the spread this season, along with Army. I played Oklahoma State. I had just a pure numbers play. Look, BYU has been one of the luckiest teams in the country. They've been way better than expected. But I mean, every week they get outgained. They will get pick sixes, punt return touchdowns, and completely misleading final scores, seemingly every single week. This team still has issues on offense. And Oklahoma State, are they on quit watch? I don't know. We talked about this earlier in the week on the new BCS. McMurphy thinks they're going to respond off the bye week to Gundy. We've seen Gundy's teams look lifeless and then respond in the second half of seasons before. Quarterback change here. There's a lot of uncertainty in this. Looks like Garrett Rangel will get the start over Alan Bowman. And then you also could see, which I'm actually, someone who bet Oklahoma State, I'm actually more excited to see potentially the freshman Flores come in, who has been getting some run with the ones reportedly. So you could see him at some point. Makes it a little more difficult for BYU from a preparation standpoint. So, I mean, look, the BYU rushing attack has not been great. That's where you could really get this Oklahoma State defense that just is not good in that area and has also suffered injuries. So I think just pure numbers play, I can't get here. Liked it a bit more at 10, but would still play it. Where it sits currently, I'm with the Pokes. It's a team I was fading, but look, sometimes you just have to take a number. I'm rolling with Oklahoma State here off the bye to respond. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I've played this myself today. Numbers play just like you. I make it BYU -5.5. So at 9.5, anything above 7, you're going to have to take interest in Oklahoma State here. And you really have to take interest for two other data points. Gundy is 11-4 against the spread off of a bye since 2017. I'm not so much of a trends player, but I am oh, thank God Alan Bowman is not the starting quarterback anymore. I think with Zane Flores, you have to go deep into his recruiting profile. He was a 3-star. His recruiting profile says that he has a polished arm. He works great in quick decisions and slants and out routes. He doesn't have any elite indicators as far as arm strength and his size, but he has mobility to have some sort of scramble game. I think the important key thing there is that he's able to hit slants and out routes quickly, make quick decisions because Alan Bowman can't. Alan Bowman's always been a hot read and he can't get to his second and third progressions. This could be an upgrade for the Oklahoma State offense. I think that's what you're playing for. Plus, Oklahoma State likes to go really fast, 22 seconds per play. They need a quarterback that can help get them quick first downs and get down the field, and they just haven't had that yet. The offensive line, this average age of 26 years old, they finally have shown up in pass blocking. Right now, they're fourth nationally per PFF and pass blocking. So if Zane Flores comes in, we should be able to see him back there and hit a couple of targets against this BYU defense. On the other side, Jake Retzlaff, what do we talk about here? 7-7 turnover worthy play to big time throw ratio. He just crumbles in a pressured pocket. If you can get any kind of press in that pocket, Retzlaff has been pretty terrible. The problem with Oklahoma State is they generated only 2 sacks against West Virginia. They're just struggling to get pressure, and that hasn't really worked out there. But you're right. It's been a bye week. Gundy always gets his team to turn around. You see that in the against the spread, and I am way more comfortable with Zane Flores. Now, you and I have known, we've talked about this with Brett. Zane Flores has been getting snaps for quite a while. I would not be shocked if he has been preparing for the BYU game itself for a month, and Gundy's had that in the back of his mind the entire time. I'd be surprised to see Rangel come out, do one possession, get the BYU defense a little off, and then Zane Flores comes out and does his thing. So I'm with you on Oklahoma State.
All right, riding with the Pokes. Let's add it. Yeah, let's add it. I couldn't convince you on Florida State.
Nope.
We are adding. I understand your trauma there. I might have some trauma after Friday night as well.
The whole graphic that says Florida State makes a college football playoff. It's burned in my memory until the end of the year.
Adding Oak State to the agree portion of our transparency whiteboard. Final game Friday night. Super late night. 15 minutes after BYU, Oklahoma State. Fresno State, Nevada. I got nothing here. I think Nevada was a team significantly improved, primarily due to just a massive coaching upgrade. And last year, you could argue they had one of the worst coaching staffs in the country. And this year, you could argue that they improved more than any team in the country from that perspective. They had value early on because of that, but I think the market finally is settling in to where Nevada should be priced. Fresno State, 3-point road favorite here. So this is a pass for me. You got anything?
Yeah, I'm on Nevada here all the way. I think 3 is probably the last number you're going to buy. It's not really a big power ratings play. I make this game about Fresno by 2. So it's not really so much that. It's the fact that the best part of the Fresno State offense is the passing game of Mikey Keene. The splits really haven't been great, from a touchdown interception to a big time throw to turnover worthy play. But the best part of the Nevada defense is the secondary and the coverage unit. It started in game 1 against SMU. Right now they're 36th in grading per PFF. But Keene, he's been sort of middle FBS in success rate against quarters and cover 1. Nevada runs both of those schemes on the back end. That should confuse Keene a little bit. Same strength of schedule for both of these teams here coming out of the Mountain West, but there's a big rush advantage on the ground for the Nevada offense. Both quarterback Brendan Lewis, running back Savion Red, they are decent, 3.4 yards after first contact, but each have created 27 missed tackles. You have to be on your tackle game against this Nevada ground attack. But overall, that secondary for the Wolfpack has been crazy good all year and surprising out of the Mountain West. And we're going to back it here at home.
All right, it's time to move on to second down and talk our favorite overdogs, aka our favorite favorites. I'll kick things off. I'm going with my Kentucky Wildcats on the road at Florida. I think, look, Stoops, last week we saw them, very disappointing effort. I talked about that last week. They've always been so poor out of the bye. I don't know what it is, but his teams consistently come out with poor efforts after time off. They usually do respond, though, from poor efforts and after losses. Already seen that this year, right? Get embarrassed by South Carolina, almost come back and beat Georgia the following week. And then, they upset Ole Miss. So I expect them to respond here. More importantly, I like the matchup. Kentucky, their offense is efficient when they're running the ball, struggle throwing it. Well, you can run on Florida. Was really struggled to defend opposing ground attacks. And when Florida has the ball, all right, they're not gonna be able to run it. You can't run it on Kentucky. They have one of the best front sevens in all of college football. You have to efficiently pass it against this secondary. I don't trust DJ Lagway to do that. He's probably going to make a few key mistakes. Like Kentucky's going to drop a lot in the coverage. They'll still be able to get pressure as well. And eventually, I think Lagway is going to make a couple of mistakes. If you just remove his numbers against Samford, yeah, I mean, they are not pretty. I don't think he's quite ready yet for SEC level football. I think he has 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions outside of the Samford game. And this will be the best defense he has faced to date in his first SEC start. Give me Kentucky and give me the better staff with Stoops and company against your boy, Billy Napier. I think Stoops 2-0 against the spread the past 2 years, covering about 17 points per game against Florida. I think it continues. Not sure where Florida's at mentally. Another loss. Heartbreaking fashion. Should have beat Tennessee. I like the Cats on the road. Any thoughts there? And then where are you going for your favorite overdog?
Florida. First off, I couldn't believe Florida opened up as a favorite here. That number moved before I could get a piece of it. I agree with you. If you even want to put it on the board, Kentucky money line, I'm all the way there. They will be in my round robins. Florida, they better be in desperation mode for this game because the schedule after this is the most brutal thing in all of college football. So good luck to the Gators here. I'm going to move on. My overdog this week is going to be Washington State taking on my beloved Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Listen, Wazoo has just been a completely different animal at home on offense. 70 points against Portland State, 37 against Texas Tech, and 54 against San Jose. I know you hear those teams and you think, well, they don't have very good defenses, but Wazoo is scoring at will at home, no matter who the opponent is. The Cougars right now are second in rush EPA. They're 20th in pass EPA. This is not a methodical offense. This is not an offense that's based on getting first downs. They just love to have quarterback John Mateer just completely blow up the field and try to get scores from that. He leads the team in rushing yards. He is everything to this team. 6 rushing touchdowns already this year for their quarterback. You can think of Hawaii trying to defend John Mateer there for Washington State, similar to what they saw with Hunter Watson from Sam Houston earlier this season. That's really the only true RPO threat that a quarterback that they've had to go up against. Watson was 12 rushes, 41 yards. He had a decent day against Hawaii defense. Hawaii's defense, they're just mid FBS against outside zone, something Washington State runs a lot. They struggle more with inside zone and a heavier box. Wazoo's going to mix in a lot of that too. That's all in their run concepts. The Hawaii run and shoot is broken. I know that they were missing some key, targets and receivers coming into this season, but I never imagined they would be 131st in creating explosives through the air. That is not a Timmy Chang run and shoot offense that Hawaii is running right now. There's no single target on this team that is getting more.
No Shager bombs.
No Shager bombs, and no wide receiver is over 2 yards per route run. I'm shocked. You could have told me that in preseason. I would have never believed you. The other thing I don't believe, Hofel Ashlock, who's their best wide receiver by far, has more drops than anybody else in the nation. I don't know what's going on there with his hands. He's only caught 2 of 7 contested catches, 7 contested throws from Shager this year. Ashlock is just not coming down with the ball, and he can't hold on to it, leading the nation in drops. Shager has accuracy concerns. Hawaii's already had 32 contested throws so far this year. Something's wrong with the passing game. It's not working, and Wazoo is 25th in pass coverage per PFF. So let's look at the Cougs here to absolutely roll with this high spread.
Yeah, they really miss Stephen McBride. He's
Yep.
just really missing from this offense. Why I think you're going with Washington State, though. This caller on the voicemail last week said, Collin, stop fading my Cougs.
Yep.
Well, you listened. You're rolling with the Cougs. All right, so favorites, Kentucky and Washington State. Let's move on to third down. our favorite moneyline underdogs for our underdog moneyline parlay have hit 2 in a row, going for a show record 3 straight. You were just talking about John Mateer. I'm going to talk a little. How about a little John Denver? Country roads take. You don't want to hear me sing. I'm going with West Virginia. They burned me last week, but I think this is actually a better matchup. Was concerned about Iowa State's passing attack and explosives against this West Virginia secondary. That's their clear weakness. Do I really trust Kansas State's passing attack now? No, not really. So I'll make Avery Johnson and company prove to me, because the West Virginia run defense is solid. I mean, what did Iowa State average? Like under 3 yards per carry last week. I'll make Avery Johnson prove to me he can go on the road here, get it done in a hostile environment through the air. Give me the Mountaineers here. Where are you going?
Agree if you want to put that on the board. I'm going to stay in the Pac-2 after taking Washington State. I'm going to go with Oregon State, and what could be the spot of the weekend, taking on UNLV. UNLV is going to come up to Corvallis. They just got done routing Utah State. They're 2-0 in the Mountain West. They're going to go up to Corvallis, and what's coming on deck? A short week Friday night bonanza extravaganza against Boise State next week, the G5 showcase of the year. So why would you care about going to Corvallis, an out-of-conference game that doesn't mean anything except maybe the fact that you might not make the college football playoff if you lose this game? Interesting to note that Beavers defensive coordinator Keith Hayward, very familiar with Las Vegas. He was on the Raiders staff last year, but before that, he was the defensive coordinator at UNLV before Barry Odom took over. There is a lot of overlap with the go-go offense of Brennan Marion, who arrived after he departed too. But remember, he stayed in Las Vegas, and he's close to the program and probably knows how to defend this offense. Injuries have been a really large concern for this Oregon State defense. You can't really look in their analytics and say this is going to be a great play. Oregon State has been torn up on the ground here across the board. So we need their defense to step up here at home. We need a little Corvallis magic. And the best option against UNLV is the Oregon State rushing offense. And this is exactly what Vanderbilt does. This is what service academies do. We're going to choke you out on the ground. You're not going to get any possessions for that go-go offense. And we're going to run the ball and get about 100 first downs here. If you look at that rushing offense, it's about a 63% rate. They are top 10 in rushing success rate. They are top 10 also in quality drives. Oregon State does get themselves in scoring position often. Anthony Hakerson's up to 12 TDs this season. Both he and Jamius Griffin, they've combined for 31 rushing attempts that have gone for at least 10 yards. So they do have explosive runs that move the chains. Man, outside, inside zone, all of those run concepts are in there. Those are things that UNLV have had problems with this year. They've been torched by inside zone. So, and havoc allowed advantages for the Beavers here. UNLV is not going to be able to get in past that offensive line and play around in the backfield and get tackles for loss against this Oregon State offensive line. So I like Oregon State. They need to own the time of possession, which they should here. They ought to own first downs, which they should here. And that ground game will get them into scoring position and keep that UNLV go-go off the field.
I agree. Both played against the spread. Didn't add West Virginia because I haven't played them against the spread yet, but added Oregon State here. Just a numbers play. I hate this Oregon State team, but think the hate has gone too far. The run defense is atrocious, which worries me. But yeah, tough spot for UNLV. I think valuable number. And by the way, I mean, UNLV's defense has to be gassed. What have they been on the field? 2 straight games, 90+ plays.
Yeah.
Last week in elevation, here's a little nugget for you. There's 9 FBS stadiums that are 4,000+ feet in altitude. Teams that play a road game in one of those 9 and then play a road game the next week, 91-20-5 against the spread since 2005. As road favorites, 28-50-1, 36%, 16-39-1, 29% against the spread when favored by more than 4 points. So you could see some fatigue here for sure on the defensive end against a team that wants to just lean on you with that big offensive line. All right, let's move on to we're going to go for it. 4th down, our favorite bet of the weekend. Oh, I think mine last week was mine Iowa? I think it might have been. Or was that my favorite? I don't know. But this week, I'm fading Iowa. I'm going with Michigan State. This is a really good spot. Iowa they blew out Washington. Bit of a misleading final. It was a spectacular situational spot. But now I think you're getting Michigan State in a great situational spot. This is a team off of games against Ohio State and Oregon Now you get, 15 days off before this game against Iowa. I think that means a lot, especially early in the season with a team that has had so much turnover and has a new staff and a staff that I highly respect from a matchup perspective. Number one, this Iowa defense is not the same elite unit as it has been, specifically along their defensive line. They want to run the ball, lean on Caleb Johnson. Michigan State's defensive strength is their run D. So I think they match up pretty well here. Jonathan Smith, coach I highly respect. I think we'll have Michigan State ready here with extra time to prepare. 8 or more days. Got 15 here, by the way. 10-2 against the spread. 8-1 as an underdog, covering by about a field goal per game. Give me Sparty. Where you going?
Yeah, Michigan State off that bye. We got to trust in Jonathan Smith here. I'm going to go up to Storrs, Connecticut, where Wake Forest is going to travel up to play UConn, who is coming off of a bye here. We're going to back the Huskies. Wake has lost 2 one-possession games. I'm not sure if they really have the makeup to keep it close and win some of these one-possession games. That's 2 that they've lost already this year. And frankly, they were box score frauds in that one road trip they've had this season against NC State. There was an early NC State fumble in that game that created a 2-play, 2-yard drive for Wake Forest to get the score that was needed to win that. So there's a lot of fraudulence going on in the Wake Forest box scores. Not a believer of what they've done so far. UConn's been great at home. They've won 5 straight. They're coming off a bye week. Offense has been in cruise control at home. They've scored at least 47 points in 3 of 4 games at home this season. The Deacons are in a non-con sandwich right here. They just got destroyed on the ground by Clemson. They got Stanford next week before they finally get to their bye. I imagine they're more worried about their ACC schedule than they are traveling up to Connecticut. And UConn right now is top 20 in defensive passing success rate. That's going to be needed facing Hank Bachmeier. And Wake is 133rd in defensive stuff rate. Are they even trying to play defense in the A and B gaps on short yardage situations? That's not going to be good against the UConn trio of Darrell Robinson, Cameron Edwards, and Mel Brown. That trio has created 45 missed tackles, each of them averaging between 3.4 to 4.2 yards after first contact. This ground game for UConn is for real. Wake Forest can't defend it, and I don't think Wake Forest cares about this game. So give me UConn here in our 4th down attempt.
Yeah, I have no feel here. It is a good spot. Wake's also dealt with a ton of injuries, but I'll be on the sidelines here, rooting you on. That'll do it for 3 and out. All right, that'll do it for us. Let's take a quick look at the board. No head-to-heads this week. No head-to-heads.
Pick a Friday night game. You'll beat me.
Yeah. Well, you're not on Florida State. You should will you please bet Duke?
Give me a bet Duke.
Please bet Duke. Here's the board. Agree. We're 10-1. So we started tracking on agrees. This week, Oak State, Kentucky. Tell me if you want me to remove any, because that Oregon State, ECU, Maryland, Charlotte, Arkansas.
Yeah.
So we got 7 agrees. The trash, just 5-1 for me, 1-0 for Collin. Just 4 for me. ECU, Charlotte, Ball State, Western Michigan. That'll do it for us. Great episode again. Hopefully leads to some winners. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to Collin, as always. Thanks to our producer, Matt Mitchell, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy, leave a review. You know the deal. Group of 5 guys. Our episode's already out. Live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. Recap episode will be out Monday. Make sure you call into the voicemail, 959-BAD-BEAT. Scream at us for all of our bad takes. I'm sure we're going to hear about it if Army and Navy cover. Oh, boy. So thanks for tuning in again. Let's keep it rolling in week 8. See you all on Saturday. Cheers.
Peace out.